In a workshop behind a terraced house in Walsall, 4 generations of the same family made saddles and harness by hand for very nearly 100 years. The Hartleys weren't rich, but they were comfortable, respected, and secure, in a way that a great many families earning far more today would envy. They owned their home, they never went short, and the skill in their hands, passed from father to son down the years, was a kind of wealth that no employer could ever take away and no factory could ever truly replace. Then, in the space of a single generation, the trade that had kept the Hartleys comfortable for a century quietly disappeared, and with it went a whole way of making a living that this country has very nearly forgotten. Number 9 on this list is a trade that existed in every single town in Britain, employing thousands, that has now all but vanished from the high street. Number 5 was so skilled and so well paid that it could keep a family in real comfort on the work of one pair of hands. And number 1 isn't a trade at all, but the thing that every trade on this list gave a family. The thing we've lost most completely, and the thing we miss the most without even knowing its name. These weren't grand professions. They were honest, skilled trades, the quiet backbone of British life that made ordinary families comfortable and secure for generations. Hit subscribe, because in the next 20 minutes I'm going to walk you through 12 lost British trades that quietly made families comfortable for 100 years, and show you exactly what we lost when they went. Let us count down the 12 lost British trades that quietly made families comfortable for 100 years. Number 12. The cobbler who kept a town in shoes. On nearly every street of any size, there was a cobbler, and he was never short of work, because in a world where shoes were expensive and made to last, everybody had them mended rather than thrown away. He resoled, rehealed, restitched, and patched, turning a worn-out pair back into a good pair for a fraction of the cost of new ones, and the whole town came to his door. It was a proper skilled trade learned over years, and it kept a family in steady, reliable security. The cobbler wasn't rich, but he owned his little shop, he was respected, and the work never dried up, because shoes always wore out and people always needed them mended. He knew every foot in the neighborhood and half the town's secrets besides, picked up across the counter. The cobbler all but vanished when shoes became cheap and disposable, made abroad for so little that it seemed easier to bin a worn pair than mend them. But look at what we lost. A skilled, secure living for thousands of families, and a world where a good pair of shoes lasted a decade instead of a season. The few cobblers left today are rare and busy, because the skill never stopped being valuable. We just stopped valuing it. Number 11. The seamstress and the tailor who clothed the community. Before clothes came ready-made and cheap from factories overseas, they were made and fitted by hand, and every community had its seamstresses and tailors who did the work. A good tailor could make a suit that lasted 20 years and fitted like nothing off a peg ever will. A skilled seamstress made dresses, did alterations, and kept a whole neighborhood properly clothed. This was a trade that made a real, prosperous living, because everybody needed clothes, and clothes needed skill to make and mend. The tailor on the high street, the seamstress working from her front room, these were respected, well-paid craftspeople, whose work was always in demand. The skill of making a garment from a length of cloth was genuinely valuable, and it was rewarded as such. Cheap, mass-produced clothing very nearly wiped the trade out, selling us garments so cheap it seemed pointless to have anything made or mended. But the result is a world drowning in disposable clothes that fit nobody properly and fall apart in months, while the skill to make something that truly lasts has become rare and precious. The tailor and the seamstress made families secure for generations, on a skill we threw away for the sake of cheapness. Number 10. The blacksmith at the heart of every village. For centuries, the blacksmith was one of the most important people in any community. and the trade kept families secure and respected for generation after generation. He shod the horses, mended the tools, made the gates and the hinges, and the 100 iron things a village needed, and he was never, ever short of work, because everything that mattered was made of iron, and iron needed a smith. The forge was often handed down through a family for 100 years or more. The skill passed from father to son, the same family at the same anvil for a century. It was hard, hot, skilled work, but it provided a secure and prosperous living and a position of real standing in the community. The blacksmith was a man people depended on, and they paid him accordingly. The motorcar and the factory took most of the blacksmith's work away, and the trade dwindled to almost nothing. But the skill itself never lost its value, and the few smiths working today, making ironwork by hand, are sought after and well paid, because what they do cannot be replicated by a machine. 100 years of secure family livings, built on the skill of working iron, very nearly lost entirely. Number 9. The cooper who made every barrel in Britain. This is the trade that existed in every town, employing thousands, that has now all but vanished. The cooper made barrels, casks and tubs, and before cardboard and plastic and steel, very nearly everything was stored and shipped in wooden barrels. Beer, wine, spirits, fish, flour, nails, gunpowder, you name it, it traveled in a barrel, and every barrel was made by hand by a skilled cooper. It was a highly skilled trade, one of the most skilled of all, requiring years of apprenticeship to learn how to shape and fit the staves so that a barrel held liquid without a drop of leakage, using no glue and no nails, just perfectly cut wood and iron hoops. A good cooper was a craftsman of the highest order, and the trade kept families solvent for generations, because the world ran on barrels, and somebody had to make them. When steel drums, cardboard boxes, and plastic containers arrived, the bottom fell out of the trade almost overnight, and the cooper, once found in every town, became one of the rarest craftsmen in the country. A handful remain, mostly making barrels for whiskey and the finest beer, and they are paid very well indeed because the skill is so rare and so genuinely difficult. An entire skilled profession, the backbone of trade and storage for centuries, very nearly gone. Now, here's where I want you to stop and notice what's really going on with this list, because it's the thing that matters most. Look at what these trades had in common: the cobbler, the tailor, the blacksmith, the cooper. None of them was glamorous, none of them made anyone rich. But every single one of them gave a family something that almost no job gives today. Real security built on a skill that belonged to them. Think about what that meant. The Hartleys with their saddlery, the smith at his forge, the cooper at his workbench. None of them could be made redundant by a distant head office, because they were not employees at all. They owned their skill, they owned their tools, they owned the relationships with the people of their town. Their security didn't depend on the goodwill of an employer or the health of a company they had no control over. It depended on their own two hands and a skill that took years to learn and could never be taken away. That is a kind of wealth we have almost entirely lost, and it's far deeper than money. The next trades show just how comfortable that kind of self-owned skill could make a family. Number 8. The watchmaker and the repairer of precious things. In an age when a watch or a clock was an expensive, treasured possession, the watchmaker who could mend it was a valued and well-rewarded craftsman. He worked with tiny tools and an eye for the most delicate mechanisms, and people brought him the precious things that mattered to them. The pocket watch handed down from a father, the mantle clock that had ticked in the family for 50 years. It was a trade of patience and precision, learned over many years, and it kept a family in real security, because skilled repair of valuable things was always in demand. People did not throw away a good watch when it stopped. They took it to the watchmaker, who charged a fair price for a difficult skill, and sent them away with the treasured thing working once more. The cheap, disposable battery-powered watch and the mobile phone nearly finished the trade, making timekeeping so cheap that mending a watch seemed hardly worth it. But the finest watches in the world are still mended by hand, by craftsmen who are paid handsomely for a skill that took a lifetime to master. The repairer of precious things made a prosperous living for generations on patience and precision we've very nearly stopped valuing. Number 7. The upholsterer who made furniture last a lifetime. A good piece of furniture, in the days before flat pack and disposable, was an investment meant to last a lifetime and beyond, and the upholsterer was the craftsman who kept it going. He recovered the worn armchair, resprung the sagging sofa, restored the tired suite to better than new, and in doing so saved families the cost of replacing expensive furniture they meant to keep for life. It was a skilled and solvent trade because quality furniture was costly and worth maintaining, and the upholsterer's skill could give a beloved chair another 30 years of life for a fraction of the cost of a new one. He worked with horsehair and webbing and fine fabric, and a reupholstered piece was a thing of real craftsmanship, often better made than it had been when new. Cheap, flat-pack, throwaway furniture nearly destroyed the trade, persuading us that a sofa was a thing you used for a few years and then took to the tip. But solid old furniture, properly reupholstered, outlasts anything in the showroom, and the upholsterers who remain are busy and well paid, because people are slowly remembering that some things are worth keeping. A skilled, secure living, very nearly lost to the throwaway age. Number 6. The ironmonger who sold everything and knew it all. The ironmonger's shop was a wonder, a place that seemed to sell every practical thing a household or a tradesman could ever need, from a single screw to a galvanized bath, and the ironmonger himself knew the use of every single item in the place. You came in with a problem, a dripping tap, a broken hinge, a job to be done, and he sold you exactly the right part and told you exactly how to fix it. This was a trade built on deep practical knowledge, and it made a stable living because everybody needed the things the ironmonger sold and the advice he gave with them. He would sell you one screw, not a packet of 50, and he would weigh out the exact number of nails you needed. The shop was a fixture of every high street, and the family that ran it was secure and respected for generations. The vast out-of-town hardware warehouse and the online giant nearly finished the ironmonger, selling everything in oversized plastic packets, with nobody to ask for advice. But what we lost wasn't just a shop, it was the knowledge that came with it. The man who could solve your problem in 30 seconds and sell you the sixpenny part to do it. The ironmonger made a steady living on knowledge and service we've replaced with a confusing aisle and a self-checkout. Now, here's the harder truth I want you to sit with for a moment, and it's the one that explains why all these trades went. None of them disappeared because they stopped being useful, or because the skill stopped being valuable. Shoes still wear out. Furniture still sags. Watches still stop. Every one of these trades solved a real problem that real people still have. They disappeared for one reason only, that it became cheaper to throw the thing away and buy a new one than to pay a skilled person to mend the old one. And that is the great, quiet tragedy at the heart of this whole list. We didn't decide that craftsmanship was worthless. We were simply offered things so cheap, made so far away by people paid so little, that mending stopped making sense. And in taking that bargain again and again, we hollowed out the skilled trades that had made families comfortable for centuries and replaced them with a mountain of disposable rubbish and a high street full of empty shops. The cheapness was real, but the cost was enormous, and we are only now beginning to count it. The last 5 trades made families the most comfortable of all, and their loss leaves the biggest hole. Number 5. The master builder and the craftsman in stone and brick. This trade was so skilled and so well paid that it could keep a family in real comfort on the work of one pair of hands. The master builder, the stonemason, the bricklayer of the old school, these were craftsmen who built the houses, the churches, the walls, and the public buildings that still stand today, often a century or more later, long after their builders are gone. The skill was immense, learned through a long apprenticeship, and it was rewarded with a genuinely prosperous living because good building work was always needed and good builders were always respected. A master craftsman in stone or brick could provide handsomely for his family, own his home, and pass his skill and his standing to his sons. The buildings they made were built to last for generations, and many of them have. Modern building has its skilled people still, but a great deal of the old craftsmanship, the fine stonework, the proper brickwork, the joinery built to last centuries, has become rare and extraordinarily expensive, precisely because so few can still do it. The craftsman who built to last made his family secure and left behind buildings that outlived him by 100 years. We build for 30 years now and call it progress. Number 4, the wheelwright and the maker of things that moved. Before the motor car, everything moved on wheels made of wood, and the wheelwright who made and mended them was a craftsman of the highest skill, keeping a stable living for his family across the generations. The cart, the wagon, the carriage, every wheel was made by hand, and making a wheel that was light, strong, and perfectly true was one of the most difficult and respected crafts there was. It combined the skills of the carpenter and the smith, shaping the wooden spokes and felloes and fitting the iron tire that bound the whole wheel together under tension. A good wheelwright was never short of work, because the whole moving world depended on his wheels, and the trade kept families solvent and secure for as long as the roads were full of horse-drawn traffic. The motor car ended the wheelwright's world almost completely, and the trade is now so rare as to be nearly extinct, kept alive by a tiny handful of craftsmen restoring old carriages and carts. An entire skilled profession, one that quite literally kept the country moving for centuries, reduced to a curiosity. The wheelwright made families prosperous on a skill the modern world simply drove past. Number 3, the printer and the trades of the written word. The printer, the typesetter, the bookbinder, these were skilled trades that made stable, respected livings for families across a century and more, in every town with a newspaper or a print shop, setting type by hand, running the presses, binding the books and ledgers. This was skilled work that required a long apprenticeship and was rewarded with steady, secure employment and a real position in the community. The print trade was a proud one, with its own traditions, its own language, and a fierce sense of craftsmanship. A printed page was a made thing, assembled letter by a skilled compositor, and the men and women of the print trade took deep pride in their work. It kept families solvent for generations because the written word was everywhere and somebody skilled had to put it on the page. The computer and the digital age transformed the trade almost beyond recognition, and the skilled hand compositor and the traditional printer have very nearly vanished. The work that once supported thousands of skilled families in every town was swept away in a generation. What replaced it was faster and cheaper, but a whole world of craftsmanship and secure skilled livings went with it. Number 2, the greengrocer, the butcher, the baker, and the trades of good food. The high street trades of food, the greengrocer, the butcher, the baker, the fishmonger, made prosperous, secure livings for countless families across 100 years. And they did far more than simply sell food. They were skilled trades in their own right. The butcher who could break down a carcass and advise you on every cut. The baker up before dawn making bread by hand. The greengrocer who knew where every fruit and vegetable came from and when it was at its best. These trades kept families secure because everybody needed food every single day, and the skill and knowledge of the people who sold it was genuinely valuable. The shops were the heart of the high street, the family businesses passed down through generations, the butcher's son becoming the butcher, the trade and the premises, and the customers handed on like an inheritance. The supermarket, as we've talked about before on this channel, very nearly wiped them all out, replacing the skilled butcher with a tray of shrink-wrapped meat and the knowledgeable greengrocer with a refrigerated aisle. The secure livings of tens of thousands of skilled food traders vanished, and the high street emptied. We gained convenience and lost the craft, the knowledge, and the security of every one of those family trades. Number 1. The inheritance of a skill worth passing on. Here is the thing that isn't a trade at all, but that every single trade on this list gave a family. And it's the thing we've lost most completely and missed the most without even knowing its name. It is the security and the dignity of owning a skill worth passing on to your children. Every trade on this list was an inheritance. Not money, but something better, a craft, a reputation, a livelihood that a parent could hand to a child, setting them up for a secure and comfortable life built on their own 2 hands. Think about what that gave a family. The cobbler's son knew he had a trade waiting for him. The blacksmith's daughter grew up in the forge and learned the craft at her father's side. The skill, the tools, the premises, the loyal customers, all of it passed down the generations, and each generation began life not with nothing, but with a valuable, secure inheritance of competence. The family was comfortable not for a year or a decade, but for a century, because the source of its comfort was a skill that belonged to them and could be handed on. That is what we have truly lost, and it's worth far more than any of the individual trades. We've raised generations now who own no transferable skill of their own, who depend entirely on employers who can let them go on a Friday, and who have nothing of real, independent value to pass on to their own children. The Hartleys made saddles for 100 years and were comfortable the whole time, because they owned something no one could take from them. We earn more and own less of what truly matters. And the deepest poverty of the modern age is not a poverty of money, but a poverty of the kind of secure, inheritable, self-owned skill that kept families like the Hartleys comfortable for 100 years. Here's my challenge. This week, think about a skill, any real, useful skill that you could learn well enough to one day pass on. Not for a hobby, but as a genuine competence that belongs to you and no employer can take away. Because the lesson of every trade on this list is that the most secure wealth there isn't money in an account, it's skill in your own 2 hands. Tell me in the comments which of these trades someone in your own family once practiced. The cobbler grandfather, the seamstress aunt, the blacksmith going back generations. Tell me if a skilled trade once kept your family comfortable, and whether any of that skill was passed down to you. Because this isn't a video about the past. It's a video about a kind of security we've forgotten was ever possible. The security of owning a skill so valuable that it kept a family comfortable for 100 years. Those families weren't rich, but they had something we've lost, and it's long past time we remembered its worth. Drop the trade your family once practiced in the comments. I read everyone. I'll see you next week.